recording. There we go. Okay, we're now recording. We're now live. We must behave ourselves. So very welcome to our second Sharpham Wine and Cheese virtual tasting. And we have great privilege to invite Salami Steve on this evening to talk to us about his charcuterie shortly. But just to sort of give you a bit of background how these events came about. I don't know whether you're all aware, but there was a bit of a lockdown last year. And we remember it because on Friday the 13th last year, some of our customers started wanting to send their cheese back. So it's all a bit of a sort of tricky situation for us small cheese makers. We just made a load of cheese for Easter as well, so thought it was most inconvenient. But we started to do a number of things and to try and sort of dig ourselves out of what was a bit of a hole, let's be honest. One of which was to start to link more with our end consumers, people like yourselves, people who love cheese. We did it in a few ways. Tom, who you're going to meet shortly, he and I, we work for different businesses, but we're on the same site and we're just a few yards apart. So we got together and started to do some creative things in terms of online offers for customers, linking together wines and cheeses and other products. We spoke to some of our friends around the area, fellow artisan makers, and brought in some of their products. And we're going to try some hard-boiled blue later and some chutneys. And we like to link with other people, and other people were in the same boat. So people like Quick's Cheese we've included in these events, and they've included our cheese in their selections. So there's a real bit of collaboration. And then we brought together some interesting cheese boxes, and one of which we did in the summer of last year, which is called our Summer Sizzler, which is when we first met Steve, who you'll meet shortly from Good Game. We did our Summer Sizzler, which featured the Devon dog. And the Devon dog is about this long, and it's extremely tasty. It's a sausage, by the way. And we sold that in a barbecue pack for the summer. Tom and I enjoyed doing a tasting event to actually see that, make sure it worked properly. And that was a real success for us. But so we've tried hard. And then as the summer went on, we started to get people coming to us and saying, look, we're really bored, or we're not at work and we would like to connect with our work colleagues. Would you be prepared to host some tastings? And so we thought, well, we're pretty busy, but we can find some time in the evenings. So we started to do these wine and cheese tastings with businesses initially, and we'd send out, like with yourselves, we'd send boxes out, and they'd join us, and we'd have a bit of a laugh, and we'd talk to them about some cheese, and then they told somebody else, and then somebody else came on board. And so we, to date, we've probably spoken this way through Zoom to over 300 people, which has been fantastic for us, because not only does it keep us out of mischief, but it's been great for us to feel as if we're still developing our businesses in times that are extremely tricky. So we're very chuffed, and we're very appreciative of yourselves for joining us this evening. And before we proceed with the show, because I can hear sort of shouts of "get on with it" in the background, we do invite you, when you book your tastings, to let us know if there are any special occasions. So I would like to just run through some congratulations for you. So I've got to start at home. So we're very much a family business, and my children are on the calls tonight in their various parts around the country. So good evening to Daniel and James, to Molly and her flatmates, who are probably tearing it up in London at the moment because they're students, and to Sammy, who's more local to us in Devon, and you'll see Annie a bit later. Also, I want to say hello to our team members. We've got Peter and Sarah on the call. Sarah's on a week off, so she'll be bladdered by now. And Peter's here for any expertise, just in case we're struggling. And then we've got Andrea, who keeps us all in line and will be watching you guys very carefully tonight, so you better behave yourselves as well. So then we've got some special requests. So we've got Vicky Sales. We've got Happy Mother's Day from Ellie. We've got to Carol and Frank Henderson. Happy Mother's Day and happy birthday from Gemma and Michael. We've got Des Upcraft, happy birthday from Jean and Helen. We've got Linda Mills, happy Mother's Day from Paul and Andrea. To Emma Fancett, I believe that you thought, Emma, that your Tom and Greg might be the ones presenting this event tonight, because your other half's called Greg and his mate's Tom, and this is for their birthday. So I might have got it the wrong way around, but anyway, happy birthday to whoever's birthdays that is. And also to Kelvin and Cherry Noy, brother and sister, who have joined us this evening, and it's their birthdays as well. So we've done our photo moment. I'm following a list here. This isn't from the top of my head. We've done our special announcements. So now Greg introduced himself and Sharpham Dairy. Well, some of you would have seen the, I'm just checking there's nobody else to let in. Okay. Oh, hold on. We've got, in the chat, we've got a happy birthday to Sharon Harris. Oh, and what I meant to say as well is, well done to Dave Cunningham for being patient, because we ended up sending this box twice. with a little bit of drama in between, but thank you for being patient. And well done to Katie Walker. Katie Wake, I apologise, because you were the furthest box. We got it to Argyllshire, albeit in 2 days. So that worked. So well done to you guys. Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to share the screen again. I'll be back shortly, but let's see if I can do this. If this all works, then it's going to be miraculous. Let's go back here. I think we're there. Okay, hopefully. Tom, can you see that? I can see your face. That's good. Okay, so this is Sharpham in a nutshell. For those of you who didn't see the video, I'm going to get a pointer because I can do that, I think, here. Okay. Oh, I'm going to get a laser pointer. So here, what we can see is Chris, big lad, farming stock. Chris here is taking the milk from Sue. Sue's the nickname for our truck. I Sue. It's the number plate there, as you can see. So our Sue. And Chris has been to collect probably sheep's milk, as he collected today. And we've got, and he'll pump it from our tank, from our truck, into one of 2 big tanks we've got here. And that's where we hold our milk. It's chilled at that point. And then we'll actually we'll heat our milk before we send it into our cheese making room. In our cheese making room, we'll put it into vats. We've got 7 vats of varying sizes and shapes. And in the vats are where the magic starts to happen. So got some, I can't show you these things now. I'll show you these things later. But we'll add a starter culture to the milk, which will acidify the milk. And then we'll add rennet to the milk, which I'm sure you've all heard of. We use a vegetarian rennet, and that will start to coagulate the milk. So it makes the solid shrinks together and separates the whey. And that's obviously curds and whey is what the cheese process is all about. So what we really want is we want the curds, as you can see just in this bottom picture here. We want to separate the curds from the whey, and it's the curds that we're going to shape into the shape of the end cheese and gradually drain the whey off. And we'll do that through a process of turning. Gets turned a lot on day 1, and then we'll leave the cheese in the cheese room overnight. And then on day 2, if you just look to the top right of your screen, we'll actually brine the cheese. We'll let it be submerged in a bath of brine for an hour, depending on its size, a bit more for some, a bit less for others. And then the cheese is ready to be taken to one of our ripening rooms. So just down the bottom left here, this is our soft cheese ripening room. So in here, it's a specific temperature and a specific humidity. And these soft cheeses will start to develop their coat, their white coat, pretty quickly. And within 2 weeks, they're ready to be wrapped. And you might have seen on the film a little bit earlier, we'll wrap them in a permeable material, so the cheese will continue to ripen in that wrap. And that essentially is the cheese making process. Obviously, there's a bit more to it than that. It's a bit more physical, but that's how we roll. I'll just skip on to the next slide, hopefully. And yeah, just as I said earlier, it is a family business. And this was our family hard at work on Sunday of this week. As a Mother's Day treat for Nikki there. So me, Nikki and Annie, our youngest daughter, trotted off to Sharpham to pack your lovely cheese boxes here. And then this is our Saturday night entertainment, was putting your flags together. So I really hope that you've done us justice and presented some beautiful cheese boards and sent them off for us to view them on social media. So that's so say it's a family business. Sammy works in the business. Molly worked in the business last year when we went into lockdown. Molly came back from university and was traveling with me at 5 o'clock in the morning down to the cheese dairy with Nikki joining us as well to make the cheese whilst some of our staff were furloughed. So it's a proper family business. And Dan's getting involved shortly because Dan is extremely good with design, and he's working with Nikki on some new cheese wedding cakes that we're going to bring to the fore over the next few months. Anyway, I think that's it for now. So I will stop sharing again. This is all going to go wrong in a minute. It's going too well. So that's I think probably enough from me for now. We've been making cheese for 40 years. We'll have a 40th birthday late in the year. And we make about 70 to 80 tons of cheese a year, all to traditional methods, which hopefully come across. I'm going to now hand across to Tom because you're fed up with my voice, and Tom will tell you a bit about the wine side. Over to you, Tom.
Perfect. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, my name is Tom, and I'm going to talk to you about the wine tonight. We've got 2 wines to taste, and we decided to actually open a couple of our kind of unsung heroes. So we'll get stuck into those later, but these are kind of, I would say, the our favourites, but smaller production wines. But I think to kind of set the scene, maybe I'll give you a bit of background information, firstly about the English wine industry, and then about Sharpham, so you can see how Sharpham fits into the English industry. Because, I think, everyone's here, you've got English wine in front of you, but there are still a large percentage of the population who have never heard of English wine and certainly never tasted it. But there's actually quite a big boom in the industry at the moment. There are around about 550 commercially registered vineyards in the UK. There are many smaller vineyards that aren't commercially registered, so this is obviously kind of a rough figure. And when I say commercially registered, there is a governing body for wine in England. It's called Wine GB. There aren't quite as many producers as there are vineyards at the moment, around about 180 producers. And this imbalance between grower and producer is actually quite common all across the wine world. I think kind of the most obvious place to go is just across the channel to the Champagne region. If you take some of the big Grand Marque champagne houses, Veuve Clicquot, Moet, for example, they'll have their own vineyards themselves, but they'll also source fruit from right across the Champagne region. And that's kind of what's beginning to happen in England. At Sharpham, we have 2 vineyard sites. We have our original Sharpham site, which is around about 38 years old now. And then we have the slightly newer but bigger site downriver, Sandridge Barton, which is where we're currently sort of in transition and moving to. So there's always going to be a bit of an imbalance of grower producer, but we're really proud of the fact that all of our fruit is sourced from our 2 vineyards on the beautiful banks of the River Dart. We've got a very exceptional microclimate in each vineyard on the banks of the river. And actually the river plays a huge effect in everything we do in many ways. And to give you a real quick breakdown of how it can influence us, being set on the banks of the River Dart, on quite steep slopes, we're kind of tilted on these south-facing slopes towards the sun. So a little bit more exposure there. And the river at this point is also salt water. Now, that's really important because it can help to moderate the air temperature a little bit. We have a huge benefit from this in the springtime. So around about, well, not quite yet, maybe in another month or so time, when we could be at risk of spring frosts, the salt water in the kind of that area will just keep the air temperature a little bit warmer. So we get off pretty lightly when it comes to quite devastating spring frosts. We have a very steep slope, which helps with drainage in the southwest in Devon. We do get a bit more rain. We get the southwesterlies coming off the Atlantic, which bring a little bit more rain, but we have very good drainage on both sites. And actually the river is very tidal as well. And one thing we get is at high tide, we get the sun bounce back off the river onto the vineyards, and this little extra bit of energy can really help to push those the great varieties we have to that perfect sort of level of ripeness. And we grow numerous different varieties. The variety that we have the most of is Madeleine Angevine. People may have tasted that in our Dart Valley or our estate selection before. We also have Pinot Noir. Our Pinot Noir red wine we did in the last tasting. That's kind of causing a bit of a stir on the English wine scene at the moment, and we're even getting some international attention for that one. We have some Dornfelder, which is a German red variety. We have some Pinot Blanc. We have a trial row of Sauvignon Blanc. We have some Chardonnay, and we have the 2 varieties that we're tasting tonight, Bacchus and Pinot Gris. And we'll get into those varieties a little bit more later down the line. But yeah, Sharpham, we've been producing wines for 35 years. So we're not one of the oldest producers in the country, but we're certainly fairly well established. And with the move to down the river to Sandridge Barton, we've kind of got a lot of exciting things in the pipeline that I'll touch on later on. But there's a bit of an introduction about the wines. And Greg, back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Tom. Back to me in the studio. Right now, it's my great privilege to introduce. We've got on our doorstep, I mean, literally within a mile of where we live, some fantastic charcuterie available to us. Who would have thought, British charcuterie. We make over 700 cheeses now, and the meat world is fast catching up. So I'm delighted to introduce Salami Steve. I'm going to unmute him, and I'm going to ask him to say a bit about Good Game and perhaps the Pig and Palate, and then also talk about the meats that we have this evening. So, Steve, are you unmuted?
I am unmuted, I think.
Brilliant.
Cool. Hi, I'm Salami Steve. My business partner is called Pepperoni Pete. In 2013, we started Good Game. Why, I get asked all the time. I still haven't got a reasonable answer why we started a charcuterie company. I worked in the corporate world, and Pete was a commercial yacht skipper. So we started a charcuterie company. We love what we do, and again, we really celebrate the animals that we produce in the southwest. So there's a lot of great pork and a lot of great beef that we can get. So the salamis, the choritos, the pepperonis we make, the whole muscle meats, which are essentially all called hams, are really, really good. We then opened the Pig and Palate restaurant, which I mentioned, which is in Option. It's a barbecue restaurant, but we call it kind of East Coast meets West Country. So look at the East Coast of America, where they have amazing pork. In the Carolinas, we take a load of influence from what they do, but we do things slightly differently because the meat we get in this country is different to the meat they produce in the States. And a great example of that, probably one of the most famous American barbecue chefs currently, a guy called Aaron Franklin, who cooks beef brisket, and people queue for days and days to eat his brisket. He gets briskets off of cows in America that are kind of this thick, and we produce briskets off rubies that are this thick. So you can't do the same things as they do with the same meats. So we would do what he does with his brisket, but we would use a chuck muscle from ruby cows. So we're all about celebrating the amazing meat that we have and doing something with it. So the meats that you've got to try today, I've got a different packet to you actually. So you've got a chorizo, which is a Spanish salami. So people say, what's the difference between salami and chorizo and saucisson? They're all the same things. It's just French, Italian, or Spanish. So you've got one of our chorizos. You've also got a Lomo, I think. Greg, thumbs up if it's a Lomo. Yeah, so Lomo is a leaner meat. It's not made like a sausage, it's a whole muscle. And the simplest way to describe that meat is it's the eye of the bacon. When you buy back bacon, it's that eye, it's that muscle. So it's quite an expensive muscle to use, but it's a good lean meat. And then if you've got the copper as well, have you got a copper? So the copper, this is my favorite piece of charcuterie, without a shadow of a doubt. It's the same eye, but as it comes up into the shoulder. So if you go to the butcher, and in a pig, you'd call it the collar, or if it was lamb, you call it the neck fillet. It comes off of the shoulder, but it's got, and you'll see by looking at it, it's got fat marbling, it's got a layer of fat, and all of those give it flavour. It often tastes sweeter compared to the Lomo. There's no more or less sugar in it. You're just getting that flavour from the fat. And pig fat tastes of what you feed the animals. So if you get a rubbish pig and you feed it rubbish food, it will taste rubbish. And that's, these are great pigs that have lived a good life, and we try and get pigs that are a bit older. So commercial pigs often build at 6 months. Ours will tend to be 2 to 3 years old, and you get a much better quality product. And since lockdown 1, Good Game has had some interesting times. 80% of our customers were restaurants and food service who we lost almost overnight. And we've done a massive downsizing project now. And Pete and I have just finished building a tiny charcuterie production site in the restaurant. So as you walk into the restaurant, one side of it is now a production room, and we've got hanging rooms where you can see everything hanging. And we've just cut right back to where we started from, really, which is 3 people making charcuterie, selling it online, selling it through the restaurant. We've developed our other products, like you've got some to try, which is the bacon jam.
Which is addictive.
So this, you can see it won Taste of the West Gold. It was 2nd place for champion product in preserves in Taste of the West 2019. And the product that won was a chorizo jam, which we also made. So, and we made a batch wrong the other day because someone got the decimal point wrong on the Chipotle. and bacon jam, which made it really spicy, and it's actually really good too. So that's now another product that we make, which is the spicy bacon jam. So it's when I took Marcus, the chef at Pig and Palate, when he kind of developed the recipe for it, and we were playing about with it, and he was like, you know, what do you want it to taste like? You want it to taste like bacon. So, well, what if it's no good? What if it tastes like bacon? It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So, yeah, and it's an amazing accompaniment for cheese or anything, or just to have on the second. So yeah, we really like it. And yeah, we're well, we can't make enough of it. Really, it's sold out as soon as we've made it. So yeah.
Steve, just to interrupt, slightly sorry to interrupt, but your microphone is not great, so I don't want people thinking it's their Wi-Fi. I think it might be yours, but it's working all right.
Possibly
we're
is.
Getting it. Yeah,
I live in Topsham. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. So yeah, that's us. We are a bunch of guys who make charcuterie. We've got a barbecue restaurant. We don't make tons of it, but we make enough, and what we make we're really proud of and we really like. And if you want to come and see us at the Pig and Palate when we reopen, then you can, or you can have a look on our website and see what products that we've got. But we make a wide range of produce inspired by the Europeans, but made our way. And if you really look back into history, the people who discovered that salt and preserved meat were actually the Celts, they weren't the Europeans. So before Britain got invaded by the Normans and the Romans and everyone like that, we have been curing pork for a long, long time. Even the Egyptians used to call the Celts the salt people because we were experts at curing meat with salt. It was the Romans who taught us to industrialize salt production, and then they went back and really made the most of air-dried meats and things like that. So if anyone tells you it's not a British art and it hasn't got a history written, then you need to correct them.
I can hear that. I can hear the voices in the background saying, "What did the Romans ever do for us?" But obviously, you know, there it is. And blessed are the cheesemakers. Thanks, Steve. And Steve's going to hang around. He's going to enjoy some of what you're going to enjoy, and he's going to be available to join us for some questions and some more chat a little bit later. But anyway, better get stuck into this wine and cheese. Is a weeknight after all. So Tom, you're going to open us up with the Pinot Gris, yeah?
Yeah, so we're going to start on the Pinot Gris tonight, the wild ferment, and this is the newest addition to the Sharpham range. Actually, the first vintage was 2017. We're currently on the 2019. Now, I'm sure immediately people are going to notice the color in the glass. It looks a little bit different. This isn't your usual Pinot Gris. This isn't your usual white wine. Actually, you also may have seen in the email that we sent out to you that I recommended bringing it out of the fridge a little earlier, just to come up to room temperature a little bit more. Now, this is a skin contact white wine, an orange wine, or an amber wine, and something actually that has been around for many, many thousands of years. You could probably trace the style of wine back right to the sort of the early days of winemaking in ancient Georgia, nearly 8,000 years ago. And essentially, by leaving the skins in contact with the juice, originally, by leaving the solids in, it adds a lot of protection to the wine. So actually it wouldn't spoil as easy, but there are so many flavors in the skins. And essentially what we're doing is making a white wine as you would a red wine. So the majority of red grape varieties you'll be able to think of off the top of your head will have clear juice and clear flesh. It's the skins that hold the pigment. So you can make a white wine out of Pinot Noir, you can make a white wine out of Cabernet Sauvignon, but in order to make it a red wine, you leave the skins in for a period of time so the pigment bleeds into the juice, giving you the color, giving you all that nice sort of red or black flute flavor. And also, the skins break down and they give you the tannin, so the texture that you get. Now, what we've done with the Pinot Gris is we've left the skins in contact with the juice for around about 3 weeks, which is almost the same time as we would for our Pinot Noir red wine. And the skins of the Pinot Gris have a slight kind of orangey color to them. In real hot climates, when they ripen a lot more than what we can ripen them in England, the skins will go a lot pinker. And Pinot Gris is actually a natural mutation of Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir, the sort of the parent grape, Pinot Gris and Pinot Blanc are mutations that sort of happen naturally in the wild. So the skins are, as the name implies, a little bit off color, a little bit off dark. So they're sort of gray, pinky, orangey color, depending on where you are in the world. And there are a lot of other things that we've done with this wine. We've really sort of tried to take a step back in terms of everything that we've done. Now, 2019, the harvest was actually really good. We're having a real good run at the moment. 2018 was phenomenal. 2019 was incredibly good. 2020, at the moment, the wines are coming on phenomenally well as well. So we kind of have a lot more room for maneuver, I suppose, when the fruit is really, really ripe and really clean. And when I say clean, I mean there wasn't as much rain, so we don't get any rot creeping into the vineyard or any disease. So what happens with the Pinot Gris is we hand harvest every little piece of fruit. We bring the fruit back to the winery, and then what we do is we want to crush the skins ever so slightly. We actually don't put the fruit in the press at this point. We will sort of pour the fruit into these kind of big open top tubs, and then we climb into the tubs and we give it a very natural foot pressing. And we kind of press each tub for around about 30 to 45 minutes, I would say. And for us, what the foot press does is it enables you to apply the most perfect amount of pressure, and you can feel it. When you make food or you do anything, having that sort of personal touch and that feel is vital, and it can really kind of help you ensure that you're getting around the tanks and making sure that you've pressed all the fruit. And then what we do is we leave the fruit in contact with the grape skins for up to 3 weeks. So we monitor each parcel, if you like, and a natural ferment will begin. So by pressing the juice, the grapes and releasing the juice, we've released the sugar that is in the juice. And then we allow for any natural ambient yeast that come in on the grape skins to start the fermentation. So straight away, we are just kind of letting nature do its thing. So that's the reason why we called it a wild ferment. It's a complete spontaneous fermentation. Now, these can be a little bit risky because at the end of the day, we don't have the scientific technology to tell us what strains of yeast that we have floating around in the vineyard. And in reality, we'll probably have hundreds, maybe thousands. But what a natural fermentation can give you is it can really draw out flavor that is unique to our vineyard site. And both vineyard sites have slightly different microclimates, so therefore different strains and strengths of yeast. And what you're going to do by adding a cultured yeast is it's going to go in, it's going to kill off everything else because it's dominant, and it will just focus on that one kind of style and character. Whereas with a spontaneous fermentation, it's going to allow all these other little weaker strains of yeast and bacteria to influence the flavor prior to the alcoholic fermentation taking over. What happens after that is we've got to be very careful. We'll sort of rack the juice off. Racking the juice off is essentially taking the juice off of the grape skins, and then we keep it in stainless steel. And there's a lot of hazy sediment that will be suspended in the wine. And actually, if you look at the bottom of your bottle, you'll see that there is some sediment in the bottom of the bottle as well. Now, some of this will be from the lees, which is dead yeast, because we didn't filter this wine. Some of it will be tartrate crystals. Now, again, because we haven't filtered it, we haven't taken these tartrate crystals out. And in wine, you get two sort of primary different acidities, types of acid, malic and tartaric. Now, usually what happens in England over the winter, when the temperatures drop and get really, really cold, the tartaric acid will crystallize and fall to the bottom of the tank, or in this case, it's happened in bottle, and you can get these tartrate crystals, and it can soften the acidity ever so slightly. So in every sense, this wine is stripped to the bones. It is as natural as can be, no additions. So yeah, and for that reason, it's going to throw up some characteristics that potentially people aren't as accustomed to. Orange wines are really just sort of coming back into fashion 8,000 years later. But for me, on the nose, straight away, it's got these kind of more bitter characters, but not bitter in a bad way. Sort of for me, there's some orange and grapefruit peel in there, maybe some pink grapefruit pith. Also because of the spontaneous ferment, it can sometimes give this sort of cider apple characteristic as well, this slight earthiness to it. Someone said preach. I'm guessing that means peach, and they're not just. But for me, yeah, there's a lot of nice sort of stone fruit character in this wine, like a furry sort of peach skin. And then you're going to notice that it's got a completely different profile on the palate as well. So it has a little bit more weight. There's a little bit more power there. For me, again, the fruit is incredibly intense in this wine. And by having it closer to room temperature, like a red wine, it's going to bring out all that flavor. If you have it too cold, it will mute it a little bit. There's more of that kind of grapefruit pith. Again, some sort of orange peel, orange zest in there. and you get the texture, the tannin that you usually get in red wine. But remember, we left the skins in there for 3 weeks, up to 3 weeks. So they've broken down and given you a little bit of tannin. Now, this can help to broaden the palate. It can help the flavors to last for a long time. I can still taste mine going pretty strong now. And it makes it an incredible food wine as well. So a little bit of an obscure wine, certainly probably the Marmite in the Sharpham range. But for me, there's bags going on in this wine, and it's just kind of getting people used to this different kind of, you know, ancient style. But yeah, we're going to pair it with the Washbourne tonight. So Greg, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, what I'll do is, obviously any good cheese starts with the milk. So I'm just going to share a little bit of an image here. This is if it'll go to the big picture, that's it. That'll be better. So this is James, Jade, and Adele Watton, and we started collecting sheep's milk from them for the first time last week. So we made the first vat of Washbourne with milk from these guys last week. Previously, our milk came from Tom and Helen, Tom Garland and Helen Theed, who are based up in Somerset, who are actually moving to Devon because, you know, Devon's the place to be, obviously. But Tom and Helen have helped these guys get into sheep farming. I went to see them over a year ago. They're based just down near Ivy Bridge, so about 18 miles from us at Sharpham. Lovely family, obviously family for only about 6 weeks. So incredibly, they've managed to get their flock of sheep up and running, and they've started milking them when their little baby's only just over a month old, which is quite phenomenal. So James, I think he had a bit more hair when I met him a year ago, and looked a bit more relaxed, but they've done a fantastic job. They're in a beautiful part of Devon, and here you can see their parlour, and I'm showing this just to emphasize that milking sheep is not something you do at scale. Tom, who was in the corner there, you know, Tom would be the best in the West Country really at getting milk out of sheep. And so, you know, it's good on them for persisting and giving us some sheep's milk for us to make our lovely Washbourne cheese. Washbourne is probably one of the younger cheeses at Sharpham. I think it's been around for about 3 years now, something like that. Time flies. The last year doesn't count, but it's really taken off very quickly, and literally, because sheep's milk is usually only available for 6 months of the year, we haven't been able to make enough cheese to satisfy the demand. It's won some brilliant awards, as I said in the video before. This actually won the Global Cheese Awards Supreme Champion back in 2019, which I know you're all saying this is like this doesn't really something you've heard of, but this is like the Oscars for cheese. You know, this is like the big thing. You know, for a little supplier like us to walk away with a big trophy is amazing. So it's well supported. The cheese itself. So we use sheep's milk, which is extremely rich in both protein and butterfat, which enables us to make a bit more cheese per litre than you would get out of goat's milk or cow's milk. It's a washed curd cheese. What that means is during the make process, you saw the curds and the whey separating. And what we'll do is we'll take some of that whey off early and replace it with really hot water. And what that does has two effects. It reduces the acidity, so therefore you get a creamier cheese. And also it works with the texture, so you get a slightly smoother cheese at the end as well. So and what we're looking for characteristics in Washbourne is just that initial creaminess, unctuousness, a little bit of indulgence, rich. And as the cheese matures, this will be about 6 weeks old, 5 to 6 weeks old. And it's starting to pick up that slight sharpness. Works brilliantly with wines, as we're going to come on to shortly. But as it ages, this cheese just takes on more and more character. And the trouble is we can't keep it because people buy it too young, but we're going to try and catch up and actually get some cheese that we can age, because Pete is on the call tonight, who heads up our production. He's got some tucked away that's now about 8 or 9 months old, and it is just delicious. So that's our ambition, is to get some older Washbourne out into the market. But hopefully you'll enjoy it. It's different. There aren't that many sheep's cheeses. Sheep's milk is used widely across Europe. In fact, often in Europe, you'll find that they really make cheeses out of what's available to them. So they'll chuck in all the milks together and see what they get. So things like halloumi would be mixed milk cheeses. I suppose the most famous European sheep's milk cheese might be Manchego. And again, Manchego, they will mix milks. They'll have pure milks. So, you know, they're not as picky as we are about having single milk cheeses. Yeah, hopefully enjoy your Washbourne. And Tom, we've matched this with the Pinot Gris tonight.
Yes, we have. So I've just noticed a message. Someone says they don't know which cheese is which. The Savour is the more yellow one. The Washbourne is the kind of the lighter, whiter looking one. But yeah, we're going to
very stark whites. Yeah, get your flags out. Your flag should be in your envelope, and that should help. The blue one is the blue one. That's easy. That's a good one.
So yeah, we've paired it with the Pinot Gris, and kind of Greg mentioned Manchego, and you know, a cheese that a lot of people in England are really familiar with. People are very familiar with wine, but actually, kind of, if you go up to just outside of Barcelona, many different grape varieties, and they're producing a fair amount of orange wine as well. So, you know, there's this famous sort of saying that Greg and I like to sort of use quite a lot: what grows together goes together. And what you've got with the Washbourne, that kind of slightly richer, creamy, for me, it's like nutty character, and obviously that kind of texture and that fat content that Greg was talking about. The way that transforms the Pinot Gris is you're going to notice the tannin on the Pinot Gris just fall away. The texture is just going to kind of melt as it cuts through some of the fat in the cheese. And for me, obviously, this is kind of open up to each person's interpretation. You know, it's completely subjective, but I get a real lift of the fruit on the palate, and I kind of lose some of those slightly kind of earthy, slightly kind of the earthy characteristics in the wine.
So why not cheese first, Tom? What do we just give us the order here?
Well, my background as a sommelier, so I'm always going to say start on the wine, taste the cheese, go back, see how the wine changes. I'm sure, Greg, you would probably say have the cheese, taste the wine, then see how the wine changes the cheese. So it's kind of whatever anyone wants to do, really.
We eat the rind. You can choose not to. In a cheese like Washbourne, I think it makes up a significant part of the overall cheese. We're going to come on some soft cheese shortly, and you know there can be different ways of separating the rind from what's inside there. But yeah, I mean that's a great combination. I think for me, as you said, Tom, I mean there's a question about what wines go well with the meats, and I think that came in the chat. So, you know, would you say that Pinot Gris is the most sort of stable with? But I mean, we've tried the wines with a lot of meats, haven't we?
Yeah, we've tasted pretty much everything with everything twice, 3 times over.
It all in the line of juicy. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think for me, what an orange wine gives is something that is incredibly versatile. Now you've got good acidity, you've got the tannin that just opens it up to so many more foods. So, for example, maybe a little bit more of a delicate white wine would probably be overshadowed by the nice sort of richer flavor of the Washbourne. Actually, with the little bit more power in the Pinot Gris, in an orange wine, it kind of opens it up to more pairing options for me. So many times I've sort of been looking for a pairing, and orange wines are really, really good food wines. And they often go with things that are pretty difficult to pair with as well.
Good. Okay, so that's sort of our first pairing. Before we move on, will you sort of pause at this point and see if there's any more particular questions about sort of our Washbourne or our Pinot Gris or Sheep's or anything along those lines? And still some clarity needed. The Washbourne is distinctly white. So just looking at yeah, you'll see the golden color with the Savour. Okay, that's good. We've got away with few questions there, Tom. So we'll move on to the next cheese. So what we've got here, you're very honoured to try this cheese, and this is the first time that Sharpham have made a Camembert cheese, and we intend to make a Camembert cheese and bring it into part of our range. But we thought this was a great opportunity to sort of test and see how well it would go down. This is the little round one, the very soft one. Probably mine's warming up nicely, and yeah, starting to spread across my cheese board. So difference between Camembert and Brie, because our Brie is our biggest selling line. The Camembert generally will be a whole cheese, as opposed to Brie, which will generally be a bigger cheese that's cut into smaller wedges. Also, what we've done with our Camembert is we've used not just Penicillium candidum, which gives us a lovely white coat on all of the cheeses we use, but also we've used the, I was just looking at a question that I'll come back to in a second. We've used Penicillium geotritum, and that starts to give some more character to the coat of the cheese. And these are both added during the make process. So we add it when it's still milk and curds well, milk essentially going around. So these are added early and they develop into the molds later on with the cheese. This cheese is only about 4 weeks old, so it's young, and we were hoping that it might be a bit bigger, which I've heard that before. But anyway, so we were hoping that the cheese would turn out a bit bigger, but it's lost more moisture than we thought. And our intention is to make a bigger Camembert. But have a taste of it and see what you think. So at this stage, we're expecting it to be really creamy and indulgent. And you might just start to pick up some of those sort of cabbagey notes as an undertone. If you wrap this up and keep it for another week or two, then you'll really get those strong cabbagey notes coming through.
That's good. That tastes good. I'm looking forward to that one being released.
I've just got a couple of questions going back to the Washbourne. Why is it called Washbourne? There's a little village, and it's about 3 miles from us at Sharpham. It's called Washbourne, and by total coincidence, I googled it, Wikipedia, so it must be true. They used to actually, the River Wash goes through Washbourne, and they used to wash the sheep in the river. True, and just by coincidence, there is a sheepy connection with Washbourne as well. But it was named after the local village, which is Washbourne. And are the sheeps a specific breed? Well, they are normally a mixture of breeds, but they are specifically for milking. Rather than for meat. There are some that try and blend the two, but you then reduce your yield even more than the sheep. Well, you get very little milk from a sheep, so you get even less out of it. So it's not practical or economical to run with a breed that's not specifically for being milked. So that's the Camembert, the Sharpham Camembert, which is new. Thoughts with wine?
Thank you.
Yeah, I've just, and like Greg said at the start, we encourage you to kind of taste between everything and see what works for you. So I've just sort of had a quick taste of the Pinot Gris with the Camembert. And for me, the way it differs from tasting it with the Washbourne, actually some of that tannin will kind of remain in the wine, whereas on the Washbourne, it kind of melted away a lot more. And for me, the Camembert, you kind of get these kind of more grassy notes out of the Camembert and a little bit of that earthiness in the wine as well. I think personally for me, I prefer the Washbourne with the Pinot Gris, but it would be really interesting to see what everybody else thinks, and obviously in the comments see what your favorite pairings are. But like I said, it is completely subjective, and I'm sure people have prefer different wines with different cheeses, but hopefully you can see that there is a slight difference. Like I said, for me, the tannin, the texture in the Pinot Gris is a little bit more prominent when tasting it with the Camembert as opposed to the Washbourne.
What I get with it, Tom, is this, because this is still young, this Camembert, is that we're getting the creaminess and indulgence, but actually now, because you're not getting the flavor from the inside of the cheese, the actual, with the wine, you're picking up some of those chicory notes from the rind. Mm-hmm. And that's, at the moment, that's not in balance. So I think as the cheese gets older, this will work better with that particular wine. At the moment, it's actually exaggerating some of the things you don't want exaggerated. But that's for me. I mean, and what one thing I should say is, everybody, or not everybody, but people will have different taste buds. They'll have different taste sensitivities. So what we say isn't necessarily the correct method. That's just our opinion based on our taste buds. We start off with brilliant taste buds as kids, and then we gradually ruin them over life. But some people are extremely sensitive to particular areas. It might be sweet, sour, bitter, umami. For me, I pick up just the creaminess, and then with the wine to pick up a little bit of bitterness there. So watch this space. You guys have been honoured to be the first people to try Sharpham Camembert. We're trying to sort of launch a cheese this year because it's our 40th year, that we can move forward with in the future. That's something to remember this slightly challenging year by. So watch this space. We'll continue to develop that. We're going to pause for questions again shortly, but we're going to move on and move into something that's non-wine, Tom.
Yeah. We've got a little kind of Devon red cider from Sanford Orchards. And, both being Devon boys, Greg and I, we're partial to the odd can or flagon of cider every now and then. And actually, again, a really kind of underrated beverage, really. we have a real long history of cider making in the southwest and Devon, and there are still many of these ancient orchards that still exist. And I think certainly cider has gone out of fashion. I mean, you can maybe blame it on the likes of sort of fresher, crisper things like Magners, or maybe even the kind of £2 for a 3 litre bottle of White Lightning or something like that, that I'm sure everyone's indulged in at some point in their life. But yeah, for many reasons, cider has definitely sort of fallen out of fashion, but they can be incredibly food friendly, very refreshing, and they give you a kind of a drunken experience like no other alcoholic drink, in which you tend to lose use of your legs quite quickly. But a little bit more about Sanford Orchards. So Sanford Orchards are just outside of Exeter in a little village called Newton St Sires. And they have been in operation since 2002, which isn't a really long time. But what they do is they source all of their apples from a 30-mile radius, what they say, a 30-mile radius from their press, and only from ancient orchards. And some of these orchards are, 200 years old, numerous varieties, many of which actually are unknown because the orchards are so old. And actually their home is in a place called the Cider Works, which has been making cider since 1935. I think the first cider maker to go in there was the Creedy Valley Cider Company, if there's any people from Exeter who've heard of that before. One unique thing about sourcing the apples from this 30-mile radius is the very unique Devon red soils, and that is kind of expressed in the name of this cider here. Rather like the Pinot Gris that we tasted, all of their ciders are fermented spontaneously, so there are no cultured yeasts added, only the natural yeasts that come in on the apple skins, and they can age their ciders a minimum of 6 months, and in some cases they've got one called the Tremlett Bitter that I tasted, which was up to 3 years, which was a pretty complex cider. And again, for me, ciders are incredibly food-friendly wines, and let's have a quick taste of it. Let me crack the can. And I think with a cider, you're never going to get quite as much complexity, I don't think, but you can still pick out certain characteristics. It's got this real kind of red apple skin, again, a bit of earthiness and this slightly kind of iron sort of characteristic. That's sort of, you can almost sort of get that Devon red soil coming through. This is a medium cider with a light spritz, and hopefully everyone will just find it's really crunchy, really refreshing. And yeah, perfect for the hot sunny days ahead. And we're going to pair this with the Savour tonight, Greg.
I've just done a personal pairing with some of the meats, and it works brilliantly with those. I'm going to send a public apology out to, I think it's Michael Emery, who didn't get cider, Tom. So we're going to work out. He's definitely going to get some after this. But yeah, we really apologise. It's not as good as Tom's making out, but it actually is. But Devon Red has become a bit of a legend in these parts. So yeah, we're going to. There was a question. I will take a question just on the Camembert. There's some really nice comments coming through. There was a comment about the fact that actually it is releasing in terms of the texture at this age. So will it actually carry on to get the flavour we're desiring? And the aim is to make a bigger cheese. So with a Camembert, Pete's only actually cut the cheese once in the make process, which is traditional. It's a normal method, and it's balancing the cultures that you're adding to the milk, trying to at the moment predict the fat and protein levels within the milk to balance that, and then get the right end cheese that's going to let go. So it's not easy. So our aim is to be a bit bigger, and that yes, it would remain a sort of stronger structure until and age with flavour as also with texture. So I hope that sort of explained it. But there was a lot of big thumbs up on the Camembert. So we're going to try to Savour with the cider because we think it works really well. Savour is a cheese that Mark Sharman and Debbie Mumford were former sort of headed up the Sharpham Dairy and did much of that development over the sort of 40 years that we've been in existence. And Savour was inspired by one of their trips to Europe, hence the link for this evening, when they went and enjoyed a lot of the Savoy cheeses and came back. And it's actually the county council in South Hams asked Sharpham to produce a cheese, especially for the bicentenary of the area of stunning natural beauty. So I bored Tom with this story already, obviously, and so they came up with Savour as a bit of a play upon words. But actually, this was the first mixed milk cheese that was made at Sharpham, and it's made with about 80% cow's milk, which gives it its lovely golden colour, and about 20% goat's milk. So it gives it quite a unique flavour. It picks up some really nice sort of rounded, fruity notes as it ages. And also, again, it's a washed curd cheese. So if you remember, so we let out some of the whey. We add back in some scalding hot water during the make process, which again gives it that creaminess and also gives it that smoother texture. That's our savour, and we think it works quite well with cider, Tom, don't we?
Yeah, I'm just noticing this real kind of almost like kind of caramel aroma coming out the cider as well, which is really nice. And I think what it does, the sort of fresh, crisp acidity and the fizz in the cider, it just kind of cuts through that kind of bigger texture of the savour as well, and almost for me brings a little bit more of that goaty character out right at the end as well.
So one of the things we should say as well is we don't press any cheeses, so the texture and the shape is all formed by turning the cheeses through their age. I've sort of brought down some of the very sophisticated equipment we use when we're making the cheese. So yes, it's a colander, and that's our semi-hard cheeses are all made in colanders and drained in colanders, and they'll be turned. So that will form the initial pattern and shape. This particular one's for Ticklemore, which you'll see the lines on the outside, and that shape will stay right the way through the ripening process. Once a week, once the cheeses have gone into the ripening room, once a week, they'll be turned and rubbed with love, of course, just to give it a nice even coat that's formed by Penicillium candidum, and also to keep the shape nice and consistent right through to the point that they're ready for sale. And savour, really, it's ready to go to market after about 4 or 5 weeks. But again, it's like a bit like Washbourne, is it will just gain more flavour and more character with age. However, because it's made with Channel Island, with Jersey milk, which what I should do, note to myself, is go back to our slides and just move on a bit to our next guys. Let's go with that. Next. Okay, so as Tom said, our savour cheese is made with goat's milk, and our goat's milk comes from 3 different farms. One of which is from Johnny and Marina Watton, who are based down in East Praw, beautiful part of the world, and they have now about 400 goats running around. It's a bit like going to one of these play farms, really. They're really cute and cuddly. This one up in the right, I've not got my pointer on. This one up in the right-hand corner here was actually born the day before I went out there, which was last week. Yeah, very, very cute and cuddly. Here you can see that they like to be petted. And here, they don't name all of the goats, but there is a goat named in here, and I'm going to reduce my circle. And for some reason, it's called Fugly.
Get off the floppy ears.
You might just see. But so they don't actually name all of them, but that's it. So Johnny and Marina have recently also, originally suppliers of our goat's milk, but they've also recently taken on responsibility for looking after the Sharpham herd. We have a herd of Jersey cows, 52 Jerseys, and they've happily moved to East Praw and are being well looked after down there. I go down once a month just to make sure they're all right. I don't know what I might be reading it a story or doing something official there. They're not all hand fed, but Annie likes to hand feed the cows. And this little lady here was Dorothy, who was born on Christmas Day. And if you go to our website once a month, we try and keep people up to date with Dorothy's life, just as a point of sort of from city folk, as some of us are, to sort of get a bit of a grip on what happens in the world of a Jersey cow. So yeah, just a bit of a insight into where some of the milk's come from. So where are we? So that's our savour tasted with cider.
I might add as well with the chorizo, the cider pairs really well.
That's true. Yeah, that's what I think.
So there's a little bit of sweetness in the cider, just softens off some of that spice in the chorizo. Sweet and spice are really, really good together.
Sorry, I've just been corrected. It wasn't the bicentenary. It was the 50th year of the AOMB, not the. I thought it was anyway. 50th year of the AOMB. That's what savour was produced for initially. So there we go. So just coming back to the list, we haven't got any more questions there at the moment. East Pool is behind us in the picture. Lovely. I don't know. So that's from Guy. Oh, yes. Yeah, we know that's Guy and Sarah. Of course it is. Of course it is. If we move on, then we're now to the Bacchus, Tom, I think.
Yeah, so we're going to taste the Bacchus next, which is the screw cap bottle, the stop ferment. And a bit of a theme tonight, both of our wines have got the name ferment on the label. So whether the Pinot Gris was the wild ferment, the Bacchus, the stop ferment, implies that we stopped the fermentation. So we did intervene throughout the process of this wine. But a bit of background about Bacchus before I kind of go into the production methods of it. The Bacchus is a German variety. Currently the fourth most planted variety in the UK, fourth behind the three classic sparkling varieties, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier. And Bacchus is really kind of leading the charge as potentially being one of England's flagship still wine varieties. Most producers make it in a very dry style. It can be a little bit like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, I suppose. I've tasted an orange Bacchus, so people making it in the way that we have with the Pinot Gris. And I've tasted some Bacchuses that have been matured in some barrels as well to give you a kind of sort of smoky character. But we're actually one of the few producers in the country making an off-dry Bacchus. And off-dry means that we have intervened in the fermentation by stopping it so that there's some sugar left in the wine. So it's not dry, it just sits off-dry. Bacchus is a crossing, and the parent grapes for Bacchus are Riesling, Müller-Thurgau, and Silvaner. And I think this kind of wine in the UK has certainly suffered in popularity a little bit, and I think you can kind of lay part of the blame on mass-produced off-dry wines from Germany, such as Blue Nun, Liebfraumilch, and I'm sure everyone has had their fair share of that. So that kind of craze during the 90s has certainly kind of given this style of wine a bit of a bad name. But it's all about balance. Like most things, you know, we're tasting here, if you look at the chorizo, the balance between the spice and obviously those nice meaty flavors, here we're looking at perfect balance between sugar and acid. And what happens in the process of this wine is during the fermentation, white wines ferment usually at around about 13 degrees Celsius. And this kind of cool fermentation slows things down, and it happens in stainless steel. Bacchus is a very aromatic grape variety. So by fermenting in stainless steel, we're not imparting any flavor that we potentially would with oak. And also it is a complete inert vessel. So there's no oxygen, which could potentially develop other sort of slightly oxidized characteristics. So we want a very clean, pure expression of the grape variety. And we monitor the fermentation, which goes on for maybe about 3 weeks. Usually it kind of gets to the last week of the fermentation, and we have to start tasting the wine maybe 2 or 3 times a day. And what we're looking for here is we're looking for some of the natural grape sugar that still remains in the wine, but also enough acidity to balance it out. When we think that we're getting close, we turn the temperature down to about 2 degrees. And this really cold temperature kills off the yeast, stops the fermentation, and leaves some of that natural residual sugar in there. And this wine actually comes in at 13 grams per litre of residual sugar. But hopefully you're still going to find that the wine is in balance and it tastes really good. And I think for me, Bacchus is really incredible because it's incredibly clear in color. Sometimes in the glass it can almost look like water. So if you're at a party and you're telling everyone you're not drinking, and you are, Bacchus is good because you can pretend it's water basically. And you're going to notice it is incredibly aromatic on the nose. For me, it's got these kind of real sort of sharp gooseberry characteristics. It's got some elderflower, a lot of these kind of green fruits, maybe some green melon in there. And then when you taste the wine, the sweetness, the sweet receptors on the palate are at the front of your tongue, the acidity down the side. And that's exactly how it works with this wine. You get that hit of sweetness straight away. But then throughout the course of the wine developing on your palate, you get the acidity come in, and you kind of get this dance back and forth between sweet and sour, and you get this real nice sort of sharp limey gooseberry acidity which kind of persists. So yeah, an off-dry wine, made with the Bacchus grape variety, and we won the we won a gold medal for this wine in the Wine GB awards, which is sort of the biggest awards in England, and we were put up alongside Chapeldown, who also won a gold for their Bacchus. So yeah, this has always been a bit of a, like I said at the start, an unsung hero in the Sharpham range, but in of recent, this wine has kind of really helped us, well, brought a bit more attention our way for it, basically.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, it takes you by surprise when you order the Bacchus at lunchtime and you think it's going to be nice and innocent, and all of a sudden you get that real packed flavour, immediate hit. It's amazing. So yeah, it's one of my favourites actually. Like to welcome Ron Tabor onto the event. He's been watching the Gunners tonight. Ron, you might want to put the score in the chat for any Gunners fans. I'm not sure how that went, but a big fan of Sharpham cheese. So you're very welcome to join us this evening, Ron. So next cheese we're going to taste is the Harborne Blue, not made by us, but made just up the road, literally probably a mile and a half as the crow flies, at Ticklemore Dairy. Confusion there because we sell a cheese called Ticklemore. They are linked. They're both named after a street in Totnes, Ticklemore Street, where there's a beautiful cheese shop that originally sold some of the Sharpham, the cheeses made at Sharpham. Harborne Blue, like Ticklemore and like Beanley Blue and Devon Blue, was the brainchild of Robin Condon, who was one of the real inspirers of artisan British cheese in the sort of late 70s and early 80s. He was a real leader. He made all sorts of different cheeses down practically in a bathtub down in Beanley. And now that's moved up to just on the Sharpham estate, just up the road from us. And they focus now on basically blue cheeses made with cow's milk, which is the Devon Blue, sheep's milk, which is the Beanley Blue, and Harborne Blue, which is the cheese we're going to try tonight, made with goat's milk. So yeah, it's aged for about 5 to 6 weeks. This is aged for about 5 to 6 weeks. Harborne is the name of a river down in Beanley. So that's where the original name comes from. And lots of nice blue veining. So the way this works is the cheese is made pure white with goat's milk, so especially white with goat's milk. And then after about a week, they'll pierce the cheese. And because they use a different culture to us, we use, as you might remember, Penicillium candidum and geotritum with our soft cheeses and with our cheeses. But they use one called Roquefort, which you might recognize comes from the famous French cheese Roquefort. So they use Penicillium Roquefort, and when they pierce the cheese with needles after about 6 or 7 days, that then creates air holes, and then that's how the blue veins are formed within the cheese. So that's why you get these blue veins running through the cheeses. So these they make them in 3 kilo rounds, and I think all of the cheese that they make at Ticklemore Dairy is fantastic. Great examples of continental style cheeses done really well in the UK, and we've matched it with the Bacchus because we think it can take it, Tom, right?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned a little while ago, sometimes well, sweet things only pair with certain things, for example, and I think one thing that it pairs really well with is sweet and salt. And I think with the blue cheese, you take Roquefort, like Greg said, classically this very kind of salty blue sheep's cheese. Now this made in the same style, that sweetness really kind of marries well with the salt. And what I get with the Bacchus is the sweetness actually falls away and it freshens the wine up. It becomes a little bit more drier in style. Actually really interesting. I've just tasted it with the leg ham, which is the top one, and that actually brings out a little bit more of the sweetness in the wine. So that was really interesting, actually. And likewise, if you pair it with the chorizo, with that spice, sweetness also works with spice. Just think if you're having a curry, you put a dollop of mango chutney on, which is nice and sweet, soften the spice. The Bacchus works really well with the chorizo as well. And you've only got to go up to the Alsace or into Germany, where they produce some of the best sausage in the world. They drink a lot of off-dry wines up in that part of the world as well. So for me, the Bacchus, again, incredibly food friendly. And yeah, I think it's just really interesting to see how it changes so much when pairing it with the blue cheese. They are incredibly well married. So hopefully everybody can pick up on that pairing.
Just as well, I mean, I looked around last night because I was trying to sort of get my head around, why there are some cost differences in cheeses. It's sheep's cheese. It's not cheap sheep's cheese. Sheep's cheese is extremely expensive, which is not even easy to say. But what you've got to take into account is that a sheep will produce per day 2 or 3 litres of milk. a goat will produce per day 3 to 5 litres of milk. A cow producing milk for liquid milk will produce between 30 and 60 litres of milk a day. Our Jersey girls don't get worked that hard. They produce probably about 15 litres at best. Some will be producing 20, but they're producing us quality milk. So that's why you'll always find, you know, the fact that you know, you do get a higher yield with the creamier sheep's and goat's milk goes nowhere near compensating for the additional cost that goes into producing that milk. And you know, we'll pay probably about £1.20 per litre for sheep's milk, and we'll pay about 70p litre for goat's milk. Whereas if we have to buy cow's milk or sell our cow's milk, it's probably around sort of 40p a litre. So that's why you will see a high cost to goats and sheep's milk products compared to cow's milk products. The other thing I'd say is people ask us often about why do some people have goats or sheep's milk cheese and they can't eat cow's milk cheese? And that's because there's a protein in most cow's milk. Most cow's milk has A1 and A2 proteins in it, and it's normally the A1 protein that people have a reaction to. This is not covering people with a lactose intolerance. This is nothing to do with lactose, but some people, when they consume A1 protein, it upsets their tummy. Neither goat's milk nor sheep's milk contain any A1 protein. They're purely A2 protein. So that's why people can eat often goat's milk products or sheep's milk products, and where they might have a sort of irritation when digesting food, or sometimes even eczema as a result of eating the A1 protein, with goat's and sheep's milk product, you don't get a reaction to. And actually with Jersey cows as well, about 70 to 80% of Jersey cows are purely A2. Therefore, you know, people get less of a reaction. But I do stress that's not related to lactose, which, interestingly enough, just touching on lactose, people, you know, will head for lactose-free products. But in cheese, if a cheese is more than sort of 2 to 3 months old, there'll be very little lactose in it anyway, because the cultures consume the lactose. So you don't have to buy specialist lactose-free products. If you're buying mature cheddar, it'll have no lactose in it. So there's an interesting fact for you. Anyway, enjoy. This blue cheese works fantastically well with the Bacchus, Tom.
Yeah, and I think Steve just said try the blue cheese with the bacon jam as well.
Oh, bacon jam. The only reason I've stayed away is the last jar of this I opened was consumed within a day, and not always with stuff.
I've just clocked onto 2 different screens holding up Shaun the Sheep to each other, which is just put me off a little bit.
We've got quite a naughty crowd in tonight. They spent the first half an hour talking Monty Python. So good. I mean, bacon jam. Have we all tried the bacon jam? Can we sort of maybe have a show of hands if we've tried the bacon jam? And I tell you, do we know where where you can use your reactions? Can we have a thumbs up if you like the bacon jam? Or you could just human reactions are better than any. Oh, look at Steve showing off.
It'd be really interesting to see in the comments as well what people's famous favorite pairings are this evening as well. I mean, if any people have preferred pairings that Greg and I haven't recommended, or if there's any particular one that you really think sort of shines the best. So it'd be really interesting to see as well. For me personally, it's the Pinot Gris and the Washbourne. I think that's my ultimate favorite of the night.
We've got a Pinot and Washbourne. Matthew Hopkins agrees with you, Tom. We've got a there's another Pinot and Washbourne. Seems to be quite lively. There's the bacon jam and Bacchus, which, you know, I think that's more an indication of what's going to happen for the rest of the evening. Yeah. Somebody, yeah, Steve, I'm not sure you're allowed to put. I'm sure the advertising authority would have a chat with you about that one. But we were also told that cheese was good as a vaccine for COVID. Pinot and charcuterie, yum. Good. Okay, good. I mean, just while you're thinking about, you know, what else you might like to ask us about tonight, because, you know, we're sort of grinding to the end of our tasting. a few more cheesy facts that might be interesting for you. As I said earlier, we make over 700 cheeses in the UK. The UK manufactures about 450,000 tons of cheese a year. And actually, here in the West Country, we've got two of the biggest cheddar making sites in the UK, between Tor Valley and Davidstow, where they make Cathedral City, which is just over the border in Cornwall. They make about 150,000 tons. So this is a significant cheesy area. So although we make 450,000 tons, we consume as a nation about 700,000 tons, but we actually import more cheese than we make, because we export some of that 450,000 tons. And that's because things like mozzarella and things like a lot of French cheeses come in. So whilst we fear what might happen on the other side of Brexit, for the dairy industry in the UK, there's a great opportunity to get hold of making some more great dairy products, and perhaps displacing some of those that we have to bring in from overseas. So on average, we as UK consumers eat about 30 grams of cheese a day. Oh, somebody's trying to get in, Mark. Sorry. Welcome back, Mark. So we consume about 30 grams of cheese a day on average, which sounds pretty impressive. However, it's only half as much as the Italians, the French, and the Greeks do. So to all of you, you need to try harder. I think Pete and Sarah would agree that we're keeping our end up. I think we're on about 150 grams per day average, but you guys need to work a little bit harder. Yeah, so there's a few more cheesy facts for you. So just what's happening next, Tom, in the world of sort of Sharpham, Sandridge, Barton? Is there a bit more to sort of say about that?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, those who saw the video at the start may have seen the Sandridge Barton logo, and I talked about both our vineyard sites and, of course, the move. We're currently in transition. So, you know, we've been at the Sharpham site for, I think, 38 years. We've had sole use of the grapes at Sandridge Barton, which is just 2 miles downriver, for the last 15 years when it was planted. And recently we've just kind of been struggling a little bit on the original Sharpham site. We need a lot more space, and we just kind of need to move with the times, and we've grown a lot in the last few years, so we've decided to make the move down to Sandridge Barton, and we have built our brand new state-of-the-art winery, which was fully operational just in time for the 2020 harvest. So all the 2020 wines were made at Sandridge Barton. We're going to be at Sharpham for one final season. So we're getting ready to open on the 12th of April. And it's going to be our last year on the Sharpham estate, which is sort of two things. It's a shame because it's the historic sort of site, you know, where Sharpham originated. But at the same time, we're moving downriver. We can kind of grow. We can carry on developing. Yeah, and we're building a sort of this amazing place where people can come and visit and taste and experience and witness everything we're doing. So there's big change at Sharpham at the moment, but it's the same team using the same fruit from the same vineyards, and yeah, watch this space. We're in March 2022. We'll be able to welcome you.
So come and see us. And this year you're going to involve a few more of the good game products in your tasting. Steve, just you've been tasting tonight there. So
yeah.
Sort of what are your thoughts on the cheese and wine pairings?
Really good, actually. I drank most of the wine before it started, so and I forgot about cider. But there isn't much pork that you can't have the cider, really, which is great for the charcuterie. But I like the strong, bold Bacchus cheese. I thought that's really good. I do like that strong flavour from it. And yeah, I just think all the cheese I've tried is great.
Good. That's great. And just, I mean, hopefully everybody's now sort of, I'm giving them a bit of time just to prepare for the final test that we're going to have at the end of this. So hope you've all. Yeah,
I'm ready. Yeah.
I hope you've all been listening intently. And,
well, I think that's my internet. I'm struggling with the internet.
So yeah. So just to reiterate what Tom was saying, we are open all summer. You'll be able to come and have a tasting with cheese, wine, and meats. So come and see us. We're actually just as we sort of round up, we are going to hold one more of these events on the 22nd of April because we quite enjoy them, and we hopefully the people who join them do too. But we're going to make it a humdinger of an event, and we're actually going to hold it at Sandridge Barton, so we can perhaps show off a bit of the new winery. And we're going to bring some new products along, which we're not going to tell you about in advance. And we're going to have some fun, because we think that actually, hopefully, after the 22nd of April or whatever, there'll be some form of us being able to go out again, and you can come to Sharpham and enjoy us. But you know, we've really enjoyed these events, and we might well bring them back in the autumn. We might well, in between that, maybe set up some subscriptions or some way of keeping in contact. But this is for us, this is a real positive that's come out of the last year, has been enabling us, because ordinarily our products go into wholesale and end up with consumers, but it's been great to connect directly. And sorry, I'm just being disturbed with the question. Now show me the question. Is the new site still in Devon? Okay, yes. Sandridge Barton is about a mile from Sharpham. It's on the other side of the estate. If you're inclined, you could swim or paddleboard to it, but generally most people are just going to drive to it, which is about 10 minutes. So there's a really close relationship, and people will notice no difference. But come down this summer and we'll tell you all about it, and that will be good. So as we sort of draw our evening to the close, you've been very entertaining. I think just in case we don't go ahead with the April event, Andrew, if you're ready with your camera, what would be really nice, if you've got any wine left, is perhaps to maybe have a bit of a toast to us all for surviving this far to within lockdown, and wishing us all the very best as we come out of the other side. Because I think, you know, you people like us would be ones that have continued to have some sort of fun. So cheers to you all.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. And unless there are any burning, it's a shame somebody can't cycle that far, but I'd like to question, Matthew, where you're starting out from, because as a person who fully intends to do Land's End to John O'Groats, I think you probably can. But anyway, so to avoid uncomfortable closures, what we did last time that worked really well is I said to you all, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We've had a tremendous time. We hope that you have. Thanks for supporting artisan producers, because we need you, and we hope that you continue to do so. And to avoid uncomfortable you hang up, I'm going to count from 5 to 1. And when I've got just beyond 1, I'm going to close everybody down. So thank you very much for this evening. Thanks to Tom, thanks to Steve. And we hope to see you at Sharpham sometime soon. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, everybody.